Hey everyone, this is Danny Fuenzalida, your head judge at the Caribbean Games in the Dominican Republic. I'm here to do the recap of the entire event. I'm going to jump right in. I just want you to remember the criteria is difficulty, execution, consistency, flow, use of course, and variety. For women prelims, we're going to start with Ana Reyes from Honduras. She landed one trick and bailed two other tricks. So for that, she was missing most of the criteria, scoring her low. Also, Ana Marie Macio from Costa Rica used a lot more of the course, also had a bail, but her technical difficulty wasn't quite there, so she scored pretty low as well. Melza Wu from Panama, having done the tabletop and a flat ledge and a heel flip over the small tabletop with a bail, scored a little higher in the teens. So a little more use of course and a little more consistency than the other two girls. Obviously, her difficulty level was higher, and that's what scored her higher than Ana Marie. The next girl up would be Maria Arias from Venezuela, who was skating at a much higher caliber than the other three girls, with 50-50ing the hubba, kickflip on the into a bank, board sliding the rail, backside 180 flip on a bank, and nollie big spin in the A-frame and a switch flip on a little bank. That scored her at a 52. She had much more difficulty since she was doing switch tricks and hitting the hubba. So, and her execution wasn't too bad. She had flow, moved around a lot more, getting her that score. And then the next girl up would be Geraldine Sanchez, who also was skating at a higher caliber, hitting a 5-0 on the hubba, Smith grind on the small rail, and lip slide the A-frame, and ollieing the stairs. So we do reward tricks down the stairs, even though it was an ollie, but she used the big section, the stairs, and the A-frame. So much more use of course, and the difficulty was there, scoring her at 58.28. Next up would be Jasmine Alvarez from Colombia, who was also using the course really well, skating around fast, 50-50ing the rail, lip sliding the small square rail, front boarding the big rail, and 5-0ing the hubba. So she used the big section 3 times, which I believe was the only girl doing that. And that scored her at 65.58. So she had a variety of tricks. She was executing perfectly. She had flow, consistency, and used the course pretty well. Esmeralda Butler from Puerto Rico, getting the highest score for the women's prelims. Feebled the rail, 50-50 kickflipped out on the purple tabletop ledge, which was cool. She was the only girl flipping out of a slider grind trick. Backlipped the small rail, so higher caliber difficulty there. 50-50ing across the purple tabletop rail, which was good, and 5-0ing the hubba at the end. She ended up scoring at 71.57. So good job, Esmeralda. Moving on to the men's prelims. I'm going to start with the bottom three guys. We had with the lowest score Luis Ramirez, who has kind of like the same ballpark scores as the next two guys after him. They all attempt 4 tricks, all have bails, some more than one bail, and that affects their score. He does a tray flip the tabletop and a front feeble the rail with 2 bails. That's really not quite enough to meet all the criteria, and hence he gets that score of 5.55. And the next guy after him would be Josue Cortez, and he is a low caliber of trick. He does the backside flip on a bank, ollie on the A-frame, and a fakie big spin over the A-frame. He only has 1 bail, so he did a little better than Luis, but that's really due to more use of course, and not quite the trick caliber. The next guy, Rogelio Smith from Panama, he scored higher than both these guys, even though it was still a low scoring run due to lack of execution. He had 2 bails, but he did lip slide the bump to Blairell, the blue one, and he also tail slid the bump to blue rail. So both those tricks were higher caliber skating, stronger skating, and for that he got himself a 7.45. The next highest scorer would be Keith Marquez from Venezuela, and he had 3 bails, but he also crooked grinded the hubba and front blunted the small rail. So those 2 tricks were higher caliber and more use of course compared to those other 3 guys, but he only got himself a 12.39 due to the bails, 3 bails. Hard to justify scoring much higher. The next guy in would be from Barbados, Taryn Aline. He was skating pretty well. He couldn't put it together completely, but he still made the cut. He was the bubble with 2 bails. He had nollie nose slide the hubba, switch tail slide the small square rail, nollie heel flip on a bank, half cab nose slide big spin on the flat ledge, which, I mean, all of those were higher caliber skating and technical difficulty, use of course, and variety was there, nollie, switch, and fakie. So it was pretty good for him. He got a 20.25. The next rider would be Victor Melode from the Dominican Republic. He front board slid the rail, so no bails. Feeble grind the small rail, lip slid the small rail, crooked grind the flat ledge. 50-50'd the A-frame rail, which was good. Board slide to fakie the yellow bump to bar, and kickflip on a bump on the flat. Obviously, Taryn had way more difficulty and better use of course in a way. Just he wasn't as consistent, and by being consistent, you know, landing your whole run, your flow looks better, your consistency looks better, and so our overall impression is much greater. So he scored himself a 26.4. The next guy up would be Kevin Miranda from Costa Rica. He front feebles the rail, bailed on an ollie lip slide down the small square rail, tail slid the small square rail, crooked grinded the yellow one kink, lip slid the A-frame, and front blunt slid the blue bump to rail. He uses much more of the course, and that way, I mean, his difficulty was there. So I feel like him and Taryn were on the same level of skating, but he had a bail and Taryn had 2. So he scored at 38.4. We gave him a higher score. Good use of course and pretty consistent. All right, moving on to Brian Correa. In the prelims, he did a pretty good run. Shame he bailed the 360 flip at the end of his run. Nollie front board the rail, nollie front feeble the small rail, nollie nose slide the square small rail, and then bump to Smith grind the blue bump to rail going down, which he was the only one that used that obstacle. And then right after, 2-piece salad the A-frame. Super sick 2-piece. Definitely was going to be a high-scoring run. And then back lip the bump to blue rail going backwards, and then tried that tray flip and bailed on it. We gave him a 41.69. Well deserved. He was going to go into the 60s probably if he landed the whole run. 360 flip was a big part of his score. That's where he landed. Gabriel Lavalle from Puerto Rico. He skated really well. He qualified second by getting, backside tailslide the hubba, backsmith the small rail, front feeble the small rail, front blunt the small gap to A-frame, and back 180 nose grind the hubba. I mean, right there, he's hitting this big section twice. He's hitting the A-frame with a different type of trick, so it wasn't a more basic trick compared to the other skaters. He ended up with a 55.55, pretty good score for him. And then last but not least, Giancarlos Gonzalez from Colombia. His runs, I mean, all weekend he was just landing all his tricks and skating around the park like he was chilling and ripping at the same time. So, I mean, goes without saying, he scored himself at 81.33. He had great use of course, higher difficulty than everyone else, good consistency, great flow, and varying his tricks with like fakie back lip the rail, switch front blunt the small rail, the switch heel flip into a small bank, so he was flipping his board, half cab blunt the A-frame, hit the quarter pipe with a front blunt, so one of the only guys doing a quarter pipe trick, and then he would gap the gigantic purple mega gap to rail, which was super cool to end his run with that. Good job, young Carlos. So moving on to the women's finals. Unfortunately, we did have a few injuries before the contest, so we lost a couple women in the process. And even from the prelims to the finals, one of the girls, Ana Reyes, injured herself, so she just came on the board to get a score. The next girl up would be Melisa Wu from Panama. She really skated slow and was lacking use of course. She just did a front board on the flat ledge and ollie the tabletop, and then bailed a varial heel on the small tabletop. Only 2 tricks landed, so we basically only scoring the front board on the flat ledge. She got herself a 5.87. Just missing difficulty, missing most of the criteria there. Ana Maria Macio, this was really cool to see. She was able to pull off what I would say was her best run, and she was super excited about it. She used a lot of the course, not the bigger obstacles, mostly the smaller obstacles, but she was able to backside flip on the bank, kick flip the small tabletop, frontside flip off the A-frame to flat, fakey varial flip on a really mellow bank, and she was excited. And I mean, we rewarded her for it. It might not seem like a lot, but at that caliber of skating and lack of difficulty and use of course as far as like the bigger obstacles, and we gave her a 21.65. I think that was fair. Next girl up would be Jasmine Alvarez from Colombia. She put together a really good run, made it competitive for in between her and Esmeralda. She Smith grinded the rail, lip slid the small square rail, front board slid the big rail, 50-50'd the small square rail, back lip the small rail, and then 5-0'd the hubba. I think the one thing that, if I were to criticize her run, is she kind of stayed on one side of the course, even though she did hit the big section 3 times. So use of course lacked a little bit, but it was still really good. Good execution, good style, flow, and she had a little variety. We gave her a 72.85. The next girl up would be Maria Arias from Venezuela. She had a little bit of higher caliber of skating, but she had a bail, so we weren't able to give her her full potential score. She did 50-50 the hubba, kick flipped into a bank, mellow bank, and nollie big spin the A-frame and switch flip on the blue bank, which was a little sketchier than before, but she still pulled it off, and she got herself a 25.5. So, I mean, little higher difficulty there. Execution with the bail had to go down a little bit, and consistency. She had a little more use of course than the other girls, and variety using switch and nollie. That was cool. So the next girl up would be Geraldine Sanchez from Mexico. She did pretty well, even with a small bail at the close to the end of her run, but she still was able to go to the stairs and do the ollie that she had done. She 50s the hubba, Smith the small rail, lip slide the A-frame, which I thought was done well. And she got herself a 43.34. Not a bad score for having a bail. Use, of course, was there. Difficulty wasn't super high, but was there. And yeah, a little bit of variety with ollieing the stairs and hitting the hubba and some rails. And then, last but not least, Esmeralda Butler from Puerto Rico. She basically checked off most of the boxes, hitting front board the rail, kickflip into or on the bump to flat, and then 50-50 kickflip out on the purple tabletop ledge, back lip the small rail, 50-50 across the flat part of the purple tabletop rail, and then nose grind the hubba. So she upped her run, ending it with a nose grind, and we rewarded her accordingly with a little bit of a distance from Jasmine at 77.89. Good job, Esmeralda. So the women's finals, single tricks. Let's move right in there. Ana Reyes didn't skate for the injury. Melza Wu wasn't able to land a trick, or Jasmine Alvarez, which was crucial because Jasmine was sitting in second and she could have podiumed, but I believe that was the reason she couldn't. Other girls that landed stuff, with 2 scores on the board, it's a lot easier to surpass someone with only 1, even if she had a 72. Anna Marie Macio did a kickflip off the A-frame to flat, like off the side, and we gave her a 15.33 for that. I think it's fair. It was cool that she did that. She was stoked. The next girl that landed a trick would be Maria Arias, who landed a 50-50, the blue bump to hubba. Really cool. Only girl that did that the whole week, and it was sick. So we rewarded her pretty well for that. We gave her a 54.58. We thought it was a good trick. For a 50-50, that's a good score. And so she ended up getting third, I believe, with that score. And then the next girl would be Geraldine Sanchez. She played the game. I mean, she had a 43 run and bailed her first attempt. On her second attempt, she just did a board slide the rail. She knew she needed points on the board, and she got them. And that way consolidated second place. Super smart of her, so good job on the coach's side there. She got a 47.28 for that board slide. And then Esmeralda Butler, her first attempt, she landed a crooked grind the rail, getting her 69.51, and her second attempt, she did back lip slide the rail, getting her a 72.87. And then, her score was into the hundreds. So good job on that. And yeah, well-deserved win. Esmeralda, Puerto Rico. Amazing. So going into the men's finals, let's start off with Tyron Aline, who was skating really good. It was a shame to see him have a bail that like made him hiccup and miss the switch tail slide, which I think was a good part of his run. He starts with the back lip, the rail, misses the nollie front board slide on the small rail, and then skipped the switch tail and went to the nollie heel flip on the bank, and then nose blunt slide the A-frame rail and crooked grind the yellow bump to bar. I feel like he was missing getting back to the big section. It kind of made him hiccup there and didn't have enough time to complete his run. We gave him a 33.24. Good job, Barbados. Next guy up would be Victor Melode from Dominican Republic. He hit us with the lip slide the rail, feeble grind the small rail, bailed on the 50-50 on the small rail, crooked grind the flat ground ledge, 50-50 to front board the A-frame rail, and then kickflip the stairs. So we rewarded him for that. I mean, he took a risk. He kickflipped the stairs. One of the only guys doing flip tricks down the stairs or even skating the stairs. One of the two, basically. And then and one bail. So all those guys all had one bails. That we felt they were like-minded runs, so they were all landed in the 30s. Scored him a little bit more for that higher risk at the end there. And he used the course pretty well, and he also did that 50-50 to front board. The next guy up would be Kevin Miranda from Costa Rica. He did the front side feeble, the rail, hit the quarter pipe with a blunt to fakie, nollie lip slide down the small square rail. He bailed on a crooked grind on the yellow one kink rail, which was cool. He was the only guy really hitting that. Lip slid the small gap to A-frame, front blunt slid the blue bump to rail, which I think the front blunt really put him over Tyron, and the front feeble the rail, so higher difficulty of tricks, meeting those criterias there. Both had a bail, so we just put him above him. Next guy up with a 34.78. Next guy up would be Byron Correa from Mexico. He did nollie front board the rail, nose grind the small rail, nollie crooked grind the small square rail, Smith grind the blue bump to rail going down, which was, he was the only one that basically did that in his run. Backsmith back up the blue bump to rail, and then tray flip the stairs. So cool use of course, using high risk flip tricks downstairs, nollieing everywhere, or twice. That was really cool. I thought it was a good run. I thought deservingly right above Gabriel. They were very close, so they were going to go battle it out on the best trick anyway. It's pretty cool. He got 65.51. Good use of course, high difficulty. Good job, Byron. Gabriel Lavalle with a 64.66 from Puerto Rico. He skated much better than in the prelims. He did kickflip front board slide the rail, backsmith the small rail, front blunt shove it the small rail, which is really cool. One of the only guys shoving out of tricks on any of the rails. Front side feeble grind the small gap to A-frame rail, which was cool. It like similar trick than a front blunt that he was doing before. Tray flip the small tabletop, and then back 180 nose grind the hubba. So he did use more of the course than most of those men, so he had good use of course. A lot of people were skipping completely the blue bump to rail. It was a bigger obstacle, but it was still a good run, and he got a good score for it at 64.66. Last but not least, we got young Carlos Gonzalez, Colombia, putting together pretty flawless run. You know, fakie back lip the rail, half cab blunt slide the small rail, front blunt the quarter pipe. So checking all the lists, 270 lip the small square rail, switch heel flip into the bank, got a flip trick in there. Switch front blunt slide the A-frame this time. Pretty cool. He popped off a little early if we were gonna get nitpicky, but then lip slide the mega ramp purple rail to end it. Great run. We gave him an 86.48. We felt deservingly he needed to be a lot ahead compared to Byron, and that he was more than 20 points above him. I think well deserved. Good job, young Carlos. All right, moving on to the men's finals, single trick attempts. It was a shame Taryn from Barbados wasn't able to land a trick. Victor Melode from the Dominican Republic, on his first attempt, he did crooked grind to 5-0 on the purple tabletop ledge. The crooked grind wasn't pinched, but we still gave him a good score anyway. He got a 49.13. Technically cool, little difficulty getting fully flared with the trick combo, and he landed it. He executed it pretty well. Nothing was not on a grind. Both tricks were touching trucks, and the whole way through, he got a 49.13. Kevin Miranda, he did 50-50 on his second attempt, up, across, and down the blue rail, which was really cool. Only guy that did it. Cool way to skate the park. You know, and we rewarded him accordingly. We gave the highest score for a 50-50 that we could have, basically, compared to the other tricks that would have gotten similar scores. So we give him a 64.55. And then he did a front blunt shove it on the blue bump to rail, which was is technically way harder than a 50-50. Even though the difficulty and risk is there on the 50-50, this one is technically much harder. So we give him a 70.28. Good job, Kevin. Byron Correa from Mexico, his first trick, he did back 270 lip slide the rail. We gave him a 73.57. You know, spinning onto the rail, higher risk, greater difficulty. Good job. So Gabby Lavalle from Puerto Rico played it smart, starting his best trick single attempts with front nose slide the hubba. Got a 50.63 for that. Get a score on the board. Smart. And then he did kickflip back tail slide the hubba, 75.56. Amazing trick. With that score, he was able to take second place. Good job, Gabriel from Puerto Rico. And then Giancarlos Gonzalez bailed the first trick. Second trick, cab front nose the rail. We weren't able to give it full score. It was a little droopy, meaning sagging on the nose slide, but still almost perfect. And so we give him a pretty good score. We gave him a 78.59. And then on his last attempt, he proceeded to mega gap to purple rail, nose blunt slide. It was the last trick of the day. We rewarded him with a 90. It was by far the highest caliber of skating we saw all weekend. hope this helps you understand what we're looking for and the way we judge your skateboarding and how to maybe process lines with your coaches or by yourself on the use of cores, the execution, the difficulty, consistency, and variety, and in that way getting a better overall impression from all of us.
Mi corazón está de fiesta, mi corazón está